Another lawsuit has been filed against Vince McMahon and WWE, and was the recent meeting between CM Punk and Chris Jericho a success? But first, let's take a look at the key stories coming out of last night's episode of AEW Dynamite, where Tony Khan had an important announcement to make. The company president would reveal the details surrounding the upcoming second ever Owen Hart Foundation tournament, which is officially set to begin at next month's Double or Nothing pay-per-view on May 28th. The bracket will then play out through the summer months before concluding in Owen's hometown of Calgary, Alberta, Canada on July 15th. It was also noted that Owen Hart tournament matches will take place at the Forbidden Door show on June 25th, which is fitting knowing how Hart's career played out in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Interestingly, the July 15th event that the final is scheduled on is on a Saturday night and is currently listed as a House Rules house show, although you can expect this to eventually be turned into a live taping of AEW's new show Collision once the official announcement is made. This announcement is expected at the Warner Upfronts on May 17th, with the show reportedly set to debut on June 17th at the United Center in Chicago. Later in the show, former ROH World Champion Roderick Strong would make his All Elite Wrestling debut when he came to the aid of Adam Cole, who was on the end of a beatdown at the hands of the Jericho Appreciation Society. Of course, both Cole and Strong were two of the four members of the Undisputed Era in NXT, alongside Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, with a full reunion perhaps on the card at some point in the future, this when Kyle is back from injury and if the company chooses to rehire Fish. The debut came as a shock to literally everyone, as prior to the show, Strong's WWE status was very much up in the air. Whilst it was known that he had requested his release at one point, the request was known to have been rejected, with this perhaps being one of the most surprising debuts in the company's history, just based on the fact that nobody knew that he was even a free agent until the moment that he entered the arena. Elsewhere on last night's episode of Dynamite, the finals of the Four Pillars tournament would take place, with Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara battling it out for a title opportunity at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view against AEW World Champion MJF. As expected, MJF would aid Guevara to victory after the two came to an agreement last week, with them fooling the referee into thinking Darby had struck Sammy with a skateboard, which led to a DQ. This comes after last week, where MJF would help Sammy overcome Jungle Boy with a count-out victory. However, Tony Schiavone would pass on a message from AEW president Tony Khan, who made it clear that it won't be that easy. A match would then be made for next week on Dynamite that will see Darby Allin and Jack Perry team up to take on Guevara and MJF, and if the babyfaces can win, the Double or Nothing title match will be turned into a four-way between all of the pillars. Impact Wrestling will head to Chicago for their next TV tapings this weekend, shows that are set to see a major debut take place for the promotion. According to PW Insider, former WWE superstar Naomi, real name Trinity Fatu, is Impact bound, with them taking to their Elite service to write. PW Insider Elite.com has confirmed that Impact Wrestling's big Chicago surprise for their TV tapings this weekend is the debut of former WWE star Trinity Fatu, aka the former Naomi. This would be Fatu's first pro wrestling appearance since exiting WWE. We have also confirmed that this is not planned to be a one-time appearance and will be the start of a run for the former SmackDown Women's Champion in Impact. Fightful Select would later confirm that discussions have indeed taken place between the two sides, and the deal follows Trinity being spotted backstage at NJPW, GCW and ROH shows as of late. They would add that at one stage, WWE was confident in bringing her back to the company, this after her walkout in May 2022, before her contract expired, although there does appear to be a main roster signing freeze in place as of the start of 2023. And next we have news of a civil suit that's been filed against WWE, as Brittany Abrahams, who is a former writer for the company, has filed the suit related to events that surrounded her termination and treatment while employed. She would work for WWE from November 2020 until her dismissal in April 2022. The suit makes claims of discriminatory treatment, harassment, hostile work environment, wrongful termination, and unlawful retaliation against the plaintiff due to her race, color, color, and gender, and lists 4 witnesses to the alleged mistreatment. It also lists WWE, Vince McMahon, and Stephanie McMahon, as well as several other members of the creative team as defendants. As part of the case against WWE, Abrahams has revealed several incidents of racism and discrimination that made its way into the creative discussions, including several stereotypical gimmicks. Post Wrestling summarized these well and wrote, "Among the issues that Abraham had included dialogue written for Bianca Belair that Abrahams viewed as offensive, with the line written for Belair written, don't make me take off my earrings and beat your ass," which Abraham stated was based upon cruel, ugly stereotypes of dark-skinned black women, with Abrahams voicing her concerns to Callahan by email, and that Belair repeatedly said she did not want to say. Other complaints included a pitch involving Reggie, aka Scripps in NXT, dressing in drag while he was paired with Carmella, the Apollo Crews character where he used a heavy Nigerian accent, and an idea for Shane Thorne to have a hunting gimmick and would capture Reggie, who would continually escape. She also included a storyline idea for Aliyah, Mansoor, and Angel Garza, with the 2 men fighting over Aliyah, and part of the story would be that Mansoor has a secret. The suit alleges that Callahan threw out the idea that Mansoor's secret could be that he was behind the 9/11 attacks. Abrahams also claims that she was unfairly reprimanded after she took home a commemorative WrestleMania 38 chair, this despite being told that she was free to take one, as did other writers, and she was fired days later. She now seeks a judgment to determine losses for past and future income, wages, compensation, seniority, and all other benefits of employment, and is looking for punitive damages. It's worth noting that whilst the aforementioned creative pitches are distasteful, the case will ultimately come down to if Brittany Abrahams can prove that she was wrongfully dismissed, with the pitches being used to simply show a culture that exists within the organization. Within the rumblings of a reported CM Punk return to All Elite Wrestling came reports that the former AEW World Champion was set to meet with Chris Jericho, with both men seemingly seeking to resolve any issues that they've had in the past, with them set to sit down with Tony Khan, as well as FTR's Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler as intermediaries. The goal of the meeting was reportedly to see if the two could not only work out their differences and perhaps help bridge the gap between Punk and the rest of the AEW locker room, but also potentially put plans in place for a CM Punk versus Chris Jericho feud. However, before we get to how the meeting went, let's take a look at what followed it, as this past Monday night at WWE Raw, Punk would show up backstage, to the surprise of many, in order to repair some burnt bridges with people that work there, most notably The Miz and Triple H. Speaking on the PW Torch audio show last night, Wade Keller would confirm reports that Punk bumped into WWE talent on the plane back from Florida where the meeting took place, and said, "Sounds like Punk didn't just show up cold. He was on a flight with some people, and connecting dots only here, some people made it seem the idea entered Punk's head based on his interactions with WWE people on that flight, that maybe he'd be welcome or it would be a good idea to visit Raw. It sounds like Tony Khan was not given a heads up on this." The indications point towards Punk just kind of did this with the idea ostensibly being it's not a big deal. It's just that he wanted to say hi to some friends when they're in Chicago. Part of me just thinks this is going to kind of blow over as a non-factor in the big picture trajectory of Punk in AEW. Wade would then reveal that the aforementioned meeting went well, all things considered, something Fightful Select would also confirm. The report also provided some context as to Jericho and Punk's relationship prior to the recent backstage drama, and wrote, "Those familiar with the situation said the meeting was relatively uneventful, all things considered, and especially when taking into account the issues the two have had. When Punk first joined AEW, we're told that Jericho approached Punk to establish that bygones were bygones, and Punk had replied in kind, as long as there were no reason to have issues going forward."